Welcome to the Small Steps, Big Wins podcast. I'm dedicated to helping you take control of your life. Together, we'll explore practical tips, expert advice, and inspiring stories to help you overcome obstacles and achieve your goals. Making small changes is possible and can lead to big results. Are you ready? Let's go do this. Welcome to the Small Steps, Big Wins podcast, and I would like to welcome Dr. David Powers to our show. Dave is a founding member of the U.S. Department of Homeland Security, a decorated U.S. Marine Corps and U.S. Army veteran. He is a distinguished member and diplomat of the American Academy of Experts in Traumatic Stress and a board-certified expert in traumatic stress and emergency crisis response. Dave, I am honored to be interviewing you today, and I can't wait to hear what you have to share with my listeners. But before we begin, I do want to thank you for your dedication and service to our country. Welcome to the Small Steps, Big Wins podcast.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Everybody has a superhero backstory. I would love to hear yours.
Oh, and I love telling it because it's not all about me. I'm a third generation veteran. My grandfather was actually in World War II. He participated in a lot of the amphibious landings on the way in the march to Japan and was actually on Iwo Jima when the flag went up. It was pretty amazing stories there. And so being third generation, I got some big footsteps to fill. My dad followed in his footsteps and now me. And it's some big shoes to fill. And so I joined the Marines at 17 before I even graduated high school. I joined up, started the training, all that. From that moment on, between the Marines, the Army, other occupations, I've always found myself in jobs where people were trying to shoot at me. And so very exciting. No end to the excitement. The odd thing is, though, I got shot at more working on an ambulance than I did in the Marines. You just never know why people don't like you, but sometimes they don't. But I'm a person that likes constant challenge. New challenges, trying everything at least once, just constant movement and action. That's kind of my motto. Of course, my latest adventure, though, is having 5 kids. I've got 5 kids from 18 to 5. And that's a challenge all on its own because they're all so different. Yeah, so that's the fun for me is, doing all the fun things with them. And now instead of treating people on an ambulance like I used to, I treat my kids because of some of the things we get into.
What are some things that your family's gotten into then? I'm just curious.
Well, they from 5 on up, they all love to play with snakes and things like that. And we've learned quite a bit of identifying which ones not to play with and which ones to stay away from. And I actually put them through, I train a lot, I do a lot of medical training. And so I've been putting them through wilderness first aid classes and CPR. And so matter of fact, at a church basketball game the other day, somebody dislocated their shoulder, and my son comes running over to me, and he's like, "Dad, come help me treat this guy. He's laying over in the corner where he fell." And so there we are in front of this whole crowd at this church, and popping somebody's shoulder back in. So that was kind of fun.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's an impressive life skill. I mean, you're giving your kids something that they're going to carry with them forever. Really. I mean, the
Absolutely.
experiences that you're putting them through and the situations that they're experiencing are just invaluable. I mean, a quick on my end, many years ago when my son turned, I think it was 12 at the time, they could take babysitting courses. And so he took a babysitting course, and one of them was to learn CPR. And several months later, he used it not on his brother and sister, but me. I had something lodged in my throat and I was choking, and he saved my life. So, and you never know what kind of education will come in handy for your kids and when they're actually going to use that. So, Dave, you have an amazing background. I know at one point you shared with me that you were involved with Homeland Security. Can you share how you got involved with that, and if there's any story around that? I would love to hear.
Yeah, actually, more back to my grandfather. He was one of the first paramedics in the state of Tennessee. And he used to take me to his training classes when he would teach other new paramedics, and I would hang out at the fire station and all that. And so as soon as I was old enough, I started riding on the ambulance, and that quickly moved into EMT, paramedic, water rescue, high angle rescue. I mean, anytime there were neat toys that I could use, ropes, climbing, whatever, I would get into it. And so I was in a position with FEMA responding to disasters right after 9/11. And so when Homeland Security, when they were working that up, they brought a bunch of us together, and we were the nucleus that formed the whole Department of Homeland
Oh,
Security. And so, of course, my specialty there was disaster medicine, whether it's man-made events like a terrorist attack or natural disasters like hurricanes, wildfires. We would set up field hospitals, mobile hospitals, and help people out when bad things happen.
that's fascinating. So you've been through a lot of situations, not only as a young man, but also in your teens. Could you talk about some situations that shaped who you are and what you've learned from them?
Yeah, some of the most impressive ones on the ambulance. Like I remember the first time that I did CPR on somebody, and we'd been doing it for a while. By the time we got there, he had already been down for a while. And to be
Mm.
perfectly honest with you, a lot of times by the time they make it to the ambulance, if we're doing CPR, that there's not much of a chance because 10 minutes until we get there, we're performing CPR on scene, and there's not always a lot of hope. And I'm sitting there, I'm at his head, just kind of straddling his head so I can do the bag valve mask and breathe into him. And his eyes
Mhm.
popped open. And I mean,
Wow.
at a moment when there was no hope and we're just going through the motions, doing what we can, but
Mm.
just, not hopeful that anything's going to happen. His eyes pop open. And by the time we get to the hospital, he's conscious. And that was
Wow.
energizing for me because it made me realize that even among things where I'm just going through the motions and things like that, there is always hope. And I just need to
Mhm.
keep going and keep pushing through that.
Is that
Um,
physically demanding to perform CPR on a patient?
Yeah,
I would
very
yeah.
much. Matter of
Mhm.
fact, so much so that with a crew of four, because we would get backup when we had to do CPR, we would rotate positions because, I mean, even in the dead of winter, you'd be soaking wet in sweat and just physically exhausting. I
Mm.
mean, it's one of the
Wow.
hardest workouts because of all the stress involved as well.
Wow. In any of those situations, when you come across them, do you've got to have some limiting beliefs that go through your mind, and you touched a little bit on it, that you don't know if they're going to make it, but there is hope there. What do you say to yourself, or how do you conquer your limiting beliefs to prevail in those type of situations?
Just knowing that I've got a job to do. For me, it's a baseline. Like I have this
Mhm.
baseline that no matter how bad it is, no matter how long they've been down, if that's the situation, that I've got a job to do, and I'm going to do my job no matter what. And that's what happened then. I mean, even without much hope, I did my job, and it worked. And that's happened other times as well. I mean, diabetic calls are another big one where you get there and they're unconscious, unresponsive, and you once you hit them with the right meds, it's like poof, they are awake and they're up and they're
Wow.
wondering why you're standing over them, and it's just amazing.
What are some changes that you made in your life that you didn't think were going to have big results, and the outcomes of those changes?
Well, I had a rough time as a kid, preteen and into my early teenage years. We lived in a trailer park, and it's nothing really about trailer parks, but this was a very low income trailer park. It's just where we lived.
Mm.
And the only kids there, I mean, you just made friends with the only kids around, and they would torment me. I mean, just
Mm.
physically abusive. They would make me steal things for them, just all kinds of things they did. And of course,
Mhm.
I hid all this from my parents. And what this did for me, it was just, it made me absolutely miserable into my teenage years. I mean, middle school and high school are hard enough. But
Yeah.
when you've got this stuff going on, when you get home and you go out and you just want friends so bad that you're just willing to hang around no matter
Mm.
what. And it made me very angry for a long time. And I mean, even into my adult years, very angry. But what it did to change me was that at some point, I decided nobody was going to push me around anymore. And I started martial arts at this time. I started learning how to
Mm.
defend myself and take care of myself. That actually led to me wanting to join the military because that was a better place to get more training to not only take care of myself, but to defend other people. Because as much as I didn't want it to happen to me anymore, I also wanted to keep it, from happening to others. And of course, in the military, it's on a grander scale where you're protecting entire communities and countries and people groups. I mean, I wanted to make sure as much as I could that it didn't happen to me any longer. and then extend that out.
I can see those were some pretty traumatic experiences. As you said, high school, middle school, and that's hard enough. But then and
Yeah.
wanting to be accepted, I think all of us can relate to that. And just coming home, just wanting friends, but being in this very difficult situation. Those were pretty traumatic experiences. And I appreciate you sharing them with us. And I can see how they shaped you to have a purpose to serve and protect those who can't protect themselves. And I can also see why one of your missions is to want to empower dads and others to become protectors of their families. What are some things that you look forward to because of these changes that you've made in your life? You know, wanting to be more of an involved dad and protecting others.
For me, I mean, just watching my kids grow up and experience things, all the new things. I mean, just like, when they're small, everything is new. And as they grow older, they get to experience the things that you've done and that you've known for the first time. And I get to relive through all that. And not only that, we always hope to give our kids a better life than we had. And I'm not just talking about things or a bigger house or a nicer car. It's we want to protect them from all the bad things, but also make sure that they have access to just new adventures and new challenges. And kind of like the Jordan Peterson quote, help them do dangerous things carefully. And that's kind of a
Mhm.
motto that we've adopted in my family. It's just we do a lot of dangerous things, and to be honest with you, a lot of times I'm the one that gets hurt, and so we do dangerous things carefully, and then they know how to treat me if I get hurt.
Dangerous things. What kind what kind of dangerous things do you guys do besides the
Well,
snakes?
yeah. My kids love to climb trees, and I don't just mean climbing to where they can jump out of the tree. They like to go high. They go up much higher where it makes me nervous. And I mean, anytime we're hiking and we find a tree that's across a little valley or a stream, something like that, my kids are the first ones to go running across the tree. And I'm just sitting
Mhm,
there watching them, waiting, just to see if something does happen. I'm ready. But if it doesn't, they are
mhm.
having the time of their lives.
I bet your kids love the experience that you're giving them, and it's not like you said, like the Jordan Peterson quote, it's a dangerous but controlled experience, you know, and I think that's I can see the value in that too because you're also preparing them to face their own fears. So the more you face fear over and over again, the more you become used to it. You know, they're not just learning skills, but they're learning life skills and what their tolerances are and I think when we're younger, we're definitely more, fearless when we're younger. You
Absolutely.
just don't want it you don't even worry about that, and I
Yeah.
can relate to your desire to homeschool as well. I homeschooled my kids over 15-year time span, and it is tough. It was tough, but it was rewarding at the same time. If you could go back in time to your younger self and deliver a message, what would it be?
Be willing to fight, and I don't mean that in a bullying sense or starting fights, but there were definitely times I look back. Some of my biggest regrets are times that I should have stood up for myself or somebody else.
Mhm,
I mean, I can even remember instances where I should have protected my little sister more on the school bus, things like that. So be
mhm.
willing to fight if the situation calls for it. I mean, do everything you can to avoid it or de-escalate, but be willing to fight if you need to fight. And that continues on in my adult life. I mean, just there are
Mhm.
situations where I approach in my job or other places where I need to be willing to fight if necessary.
Do you have an example, a recent example of just being willing to fight for something that you could share with us?
Well, yeah, it's kind of a tame one considering some of the job stuff I've done lately. But we've got a neighbor here that lives not too far away, and we have issues there. And being willing to confront somebody when they've done
Mhm,
wrong, and too many people are afraid of conflict. And to be honest with you, too many people don't have any training in conflict resolution. I mean, so just being willing to fight doesn't mean you always have to fight, but just
mhm.
standing up for yourself. You gotta stand up for yourself and your family. I mean, because that's what's important.
Yeah, that's a good point. Training in conflict resolution. I don't think that's something that there's not a class on that in high school on how to do conflict resolution. So you bring up a good point there. What are some things that you've done to kind of train yourself in conflict resolution that you could share with us that maybe we could take away with today to think about and use when that next conflict comes up? Something practical.
Well, one of the biggest things I do is try to help others with conflict. I mean, my post grad degree is in counseling, and so I've taken courses in a course called Peacemakers, and I really enjoy that
Mhm,
because it helps me get into helping others with conflict, and that's good practice because we all
mhm,
know it's much easier to help other people than ourselves. Because whether it's diet, weight loss, conflict, anything, it's always easier to help other
mm,
people. And so,
that's
the
a good
more I
point.
can practice with other people, it makes it easier for me to do it in my own life. And so, with
No,
most
that's a
things in
good point.
life, I say if you want training or you want to get better at something, find a way to serve other people doing that thing, and it'll give you, as much practice as you can get.
That's excellent advice, actually. Just find what you wanna get skilled at and then go help somebody go do it. I think that's great advice. What are some daily habits that you do that help you achieve the life that you're living today?
One of my biggest ones is journaling. I know me and you connected over the Miracle Morning, and it's an
Mhm,
amazing book. I would recommend it to everybody, but it has kind of set the path for the way my day starts. And as Dave Ramsey says, attack the day before the day attacks you. And I
mhm.
kind of use the Miracle Morning
True.
journal setup to do that. I plan my day before it happens. And yeah, things do jump in or emergencies happen. But the more I can plan my day the night before or that morning before everything else intervenes, I find that the better it
Mhm,
goes, the more I get done, the less stressful I am at the end of the day. And I also know that being an entrepreneur, I could work all day long and into the night. There's
mhm.
always something to do. But if I plan my day, I also know a point where I've done enough. Like I've done enough work today. It's time to quit and go outside and play with the kids and do some dangerous things carefully.
Yeah, I mean, as an entrepreneur, yes, you're right. You do have to structure your days. And I also do the miracle morning. And anybody listening, my other guests so far, everybody I've interviewed, they also do the miracle morning as well. So my goal is to actually have Hal Elrod on the
Oh,
podcast at some point. I talk to people and everyone, they're like, the miracle morning has changed my life. And it has for mine as well, and I'm going to Austin in a couple of months, and Hal is actually gonna be there, so I'm hoping to be
well, that
able
would be
to get
amazing.
a couple of minutes with him so he can be on the podcast. You have a motto, you wanna share that with us?
The motto is just kind of I like to attack everything, challenge everything. I like to face everything head on as much as I can because I find that being more active instead of reactive gets me a lot further in
Mhm,
life. It decreases problems before they happen. It helps me be a little more in charge of what I'm doing instead of, I mean, because the world will take every chance it can to direct what you do that day.
mm,
I want to be the one that
point.
directs what I do and also what my kids do, and so that we can, live the best lives that God planned for us.
That's a
And
great
you know
point,
what?
yeah.
Now that I think about it, I do have another motto that I stole from someone else. Teddy Roosevelt, he had a quote called "Do hard things," and
Mhm,
I try to do that. Everything I do, I try to find a way to do it harder. And so where I live, we live way far back on a dirt road. It's a half a mile to the mailbox. It's just an example of how we do hard things. Most of my neighbor, well, all my neighbors, they stop at the mailbox in their cars on the way home to get their mail. Well, me and the kids, we don't do that. We walk from the house half mile downhill and then a half mile back uphill every day to get the mail. I wear a weighted backpack. I got weight in there. It's about 25, 30 pounds. It's time to add some more, really. And then I also carry this big weighted stick that weighs 15 pounds. And so, on average, I'm walking to the mailbox with 40 pounds of weight on me. And me and the kids are running through the woods, climbing trees, finding snakes. So, a simple mailbox walk done hard.
That's a great example, of how to do hard things, like just walking to the mailbox. I would not have thought that. I don't have to go a half mile to my mailbox, but carrying an extra something, I think that I would not have thought of that. Just Dave, you you have a life that is full of adventure and challenge. What's your approach to facing those challenges that could help my listeners? And what are some challenges that you have going on today?
Well, like I said before, always head on. I mean, any chance you get, just face that challenge. I mean, do it before it's a challenge. Uh, I guarantee you'll enjoy it more. Enjoy everything more if you just face it head on instead of letting things build up. And I try to do that with my kids. I mean, these days, my biggest challenge, I mean, most people would say it's work or it's colleagues or other things like that or politics or whatever. For me, it's my kids because it's a challenge I enjoy. And I can face that every day, and it's not always fun. I mean, you've got kids, and you know how sometimes you wonder if it was worth it having kids. And a second later, somebody will do something, and you're like, man, there is nothing better that I've ever done. And so that's my challenge these
Okay.
days. I mean, I have challenges at work, but they pale in comparison to the joy that I get from facing the challenge of having kids head on.
I'm on the backside of parenting now while my kids are out of the house. Having them in their 20s is another set of challenges, but I can guarantee that it's not, well, at least where my kids are anyway, it's not as challenging as having 5 of them under 18. Kudos to you. Is there's something that you wanted to talk about today that I haven't asked that you'd like to share?
Yes, actually, one of the big things I'm trying to do now, because I mean, my main role in life now is dad. It's not emergency worker, it's not counselor, or anything like that. The main role that I like is dad, and so my focus nowadays is helping other dads. And with my background, what I've found is a lot of dads out there are not prepared to protect their families. And I don't mean, guns and things like that. Just protecting their families during emergencies. I've been in too many situations on an ambulance, in the military, other places where things happen and dads should be the first ones to stand up. Dads should be the first ones to respond. The kids should be able to look to their dads and know that's where help is going to come from. And unfortunately, I get there and the dads are standing by, the kids are frantic, things aren't working, things aren't happening right. And that's what I want to do nowadays. Is my main goal nowadays is training dads to protect the families. I want to kind of dispel the whole myth of toxic masculinity because I think that's been overplayed. And what it's done is it's made men in general afraid to be men. And don't get me wrong, there is toxic masculinity out there, and we need to be careful with that. But on the whole, I think it's affected men across the board in a negative way, and I just want to counter that.
What are some examples of things that dads should know that you've seen them that they're just not prepared for?
Some a really simple one is just a car accident. If let's say the whole family's in the minivan, they get into a car accident. A lot of dads don't know what to do. They don't know
Mm,
how to get their kids safe. They don't know how to make sure other cars aren't going to hit them. They don't know how to. I mean, a lot of times I'll get there and I'll find the kids or the mom calling 911 while the dad's just kind of sitting there, hands on his head, frantic.
mm,
And
mm.
and not that there's anything wrong with the wife and the kids taking charge. If nobody else is going to, then other people do need to step up. But I love it when I see dads. The dads are
Mhm.
just standing there, chest puffed out, just controlling emergencies and things like that.
What are some ways that you educate dads today that they can
To be
find?
honest with you, one
You
of
know,
the
find
best
if
ways I
somebody's
find
Mhm,
is skills, as simple as like first aid skills. When I can take a man that doesn't know anything about first aid, CPR, things like that, and teach him the basic skills, and it instills a sense of confidence that if something bad happens, if the worst happens, he is able to jump right in and manage the situation. And to be honest with you, a lot of times they never need to do anything more than bandaging skinned knees or something like that with their own kids.
mhm.
But if something really bad happened, that dad can jump in there and be the hero for the family.
So from your story, what's something that our listeners can do today that would help them change their tomorrow? What advice do you wanna leave us with?
Don't put up with bad situations. Uh, like talked about when I was a preteen, is I put up with a bad situation way too long. It only got worse. It
Mm,
escalated and escalated until I was just the most miserable I've ever been in my entire life and almost didn't see a way out. And so
mm.
bad situations are not meant to last forever. I mean, it'll happen. Things will happen all through your life. That's just part of life. But you don't have to put up with it and wallow in it because it'll destroy you.
What's one book then that you would recommend everyone should read?
One of my favorite books, and one that I've read several times, Wild at Heart by John Eldridge. It's a book, like I said, I've read it several times. I've got a copy that I have read and underlined and highlighted. And I actually have all my boys read it too as part of their rite of passage. Before they hit the age of
Mm.
13, they have to read the book. And so they've each highlighted in the same book in different colors. And it's like this historical tome of what my men see as important. And they've all read this book. John's an amazing guy. I've never met him, but I follow him a lot and listen to him. And like I say, it's one of my favorite character building books as well.
So, Dave, I want to thank you for being on my podcast. We have walked away with so many nuggets of wisdom and information. How can my listeners reach out to you?
The best place to get a hold of me is bearugged.dad.com. You can find my email, all my social media channels there, just bearugged.dad.com. For your listeners, though, I actually have a free gift I want to give them. So if they want to go to
Sure.
ruggedDadLives.com, they can get a free gift that I've got on there for your listeners.
Okay. All right. Thank you. And I actually, that ebook would be available on my website. Dave, thank you very much. I'm so glad you were on my podcast today.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Small Steps, Big Wins podcast. I value your time with me and I seek to make every moment count. In order to make lasting change in your life, listening is usually not enough. So I want to ask you, what practical steps are you going to put into action today as a result of listening to this podcast? Remember, any step, any action, no matter how small, starts your journey to a big win. And if you're not sure where to get started, check out my website, personalcoachfinder.com, and find someone who can help. Remember, life doesn't get better by chance, it gets better by choice. Take small steps today and make your life awesome, friends.